Friday at 8.
Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour. India's Parliament adjourned sine die, criminal law bills, the press and registration of periodicals bill, and the telecommunications bill 2023, among others, passed. India says its core issue with Canada is the space given to extremists and anti-India elements operating from that country. Egypt seeks to broker Israel-Hamas peace. A UN Security Council vote delayed again as the US works on the text of a resolution for ceasefire and hostage release. And Argentina's President Javier Milei pushes his austerity plan with more than 300 economic deregulation measures despite protests. In a historic decision, the Lok Sabha today passed the Press and Registration of Periodicals Bill 2023, repealing a colonial-era law dating back to 1867. The bill has already been passed by the Rajya Sabha in the monsoon session. The next report tells you all about the significance of this and other bills that have either been passed by one or both houses of Parliament, such as the bills pertaining to reorganization and reservation in Jammu and Kashmir, or those that seek to replace the Indian Penal Code, the Criminal Procedure Code and the Evidence Act.
Disruptions in proceedings both were a part of the winter session of the Indian Parliament. 12 bills were passed by both the houses. These include the Jammu and Kashmir Reservation Amendment Bill 2023, the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Amendment Bill 2023, and the Press and Registration of Periodicals Bill 2023. The Jammu and Kashmir Reservation Amendment Bill 2023 amends the Jammu and Kashmir Reservation Act of 2004. It provides for reservation in jobs and admission in professional institutions for SCs, STs and others. The Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Amendment Bill 2023 amends the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act of 2019. This legislation provides for the reorganization of Jammu and Kashmir into union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. It increases the number of J&K Assembly seats to 90. It reserves 7 seats for SCs and 9 for STs. The Lieutenant Governor may nominate up to 2 members from Kashmiri migrant community, one of whom must be a woman. The Lieutenant Governor may also nominate 1 member representing displaced persons from Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Second Amendment Bill 2023 reserves as nearly as possible 1/3 of all elected seats in the Jammu and Kashmir legislature for women. The reservation applies to the seats reserved for SCs and STs. The reservation becomes effective once the census is conducted. The reservation will be in place for 15 years. Seats reserved for women will be rotated after each delimitation. The Press and Registration of Periodicals Bill 2023 allows the publisher of a periodical to obtain a registration certificate by filing an online application with the Press Registrar General and specified local authority. It says that terror convicts cannot publish a periodical. Prior approval for reproduction of foreign periodical is required. It also allows for suspension of a periodical's registration under certain conditions. 3 bills to amend the Indian Penal Code, Criminal Procedure Code and the Evidence Act were also passed by the Lok Sabha. The Rajya Sabha discussed them on Thursday. These are the Bharatiya Nyaya Second Sanhita 2023, the Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Second Sanhita 2023 and the Bharatiya Saksha Second Bill 2023. The Bharatiya Nyaya Second Sanhita 2023 replaces the Indian Penal Code. It adds community service as punishment. Sedition is no longer an offence under this new bill. There's a new offence for acts endangering India's sovereignty. Terrorism has been added as an offence. Organised crime has also been added as an offence. Petty organised crime is also going to be an offence now. The Bharatiya Nyaya Second Sanhita 2023 replaces the Criminal Procedure Code. It mandates forensic investigation for certain offences. trials and proceedings in electronic mode. Electronic devices containing digital evidence have been allowed. Trial and judgment in the absence of the offender has also been allowed. Voice samples can also be collected under the new law. The Bharatiya Sakshi Second Bill 2023 replaces the Indian Evidence Act. The new bill classifies electronic records as primary evidence. The records could include semiconductor or other devices. And secondary evidence also includes oral and written admissions. The Telecommunication Bill 2023 seeks to replace the Indian Telegraph Act 1885 and Indian Wireless Telegraphy Act 1933. The government aims to modernize India's regulatory framework in the digital age through this bill, which empowers the national government to establish rules for the protection of telecommunication networks. Under the Telecommunication Bill 2023, spectrum will be allocated through auction. Interception will be on special grounds. Telecom services can be suspended. Right of way for laying telecom infrastructure is allowed. Measures are there to protect users as well. The Internet and Mobile Association of India lauded the government's efforts and expressed happiness over the exclusion of certain services. The bill excludes email, internet-based communication services, broadcasting services, machine-to-machine communication services, and over-the-top or OTT communication services. Gautam Roy, DD India.
Many important bills were passed by the lower house of India's parliament, that's the Lok Sabha, and the upper house or the Rajya Sabha on the last day of the winter session. The Lok Sabha passed a bill related to the appointment of election commissioners by a voice vote, while the Rajya Sabha passed the Telecommunications Bill 2023 after a discussion.
The ayes have it, the ayes have it, the ayes have it, the bill is passed.
In the upper house of the Indian Parliament, or the Rajya Sabha, India's Home Minister Amit Shah moved the 3 revised criminal laws for consideration and passing. The bills were passed with a voice vote.
हमने कहा था मान्यवर न्याय मिलने की गति बढ़ाएंगे, कानूनों को सरल बनाएंगे, कानूनों को भारतीय बनाएंगे और न्यायिक एवं न्यायालय प्रबंध व्यवस्था को सुदृढ़ बनाएंगे। ये मैं जो पढ़ रहा हूं हमारे संकल्प पत्र का हिस्सा है। उस वक्त मैं ही पार्टी का अध्यक्ष था मान्यवर, और आज हम इसको पूरा करने का काम इस महान सदन के माध्यम।
Earlier, the Telecom Bill 2023 was passed after discussion in the upper house Rajya Sabha. The new law will replace the Indian Telegraph Act 1885 and the Indian Wireless Telegraphy Act 1933. In the new law, a policy has been made regarding auction and allocation of spectrum. The licensing process for telecom companies has been simplified, and special attention has been paid to the interests of the consumer.
राइट ऑफ वे अप्रूवल अपने आप में बहुत बड़ी एक समस्या थी, जिसके लिए जिस तरह से प्रधानमंत्री जी ने रिफॉर्म्स किए, उन रिफॉर्म्स के कारण आज 85% टावर के अप्रूवल्स इंस्टेंटेनियस होते हैं। एंटर का बटन दबाते हैं कंप्यूटर पे और टावर की परमिशन मिल जाती है। एवरेज जो 230 दिन लगते थे आज मात्र 10 दिन लगते हैं। अध्यक्ष जी, इस तरह के कई सारे रिफॉर्म्स हैं जिसके कारण आज टेलीकॉम सेक्टर को विश्व भर में पहचान मिली है।
India's Information Broadcasting Minister Anurag Singh Thakur moved the Press and Registration of Periodicals Bill 2023 for consideration and passing. The bill was passed in the lower house through voice vote.
पिछले 10 वर्षों में पुराने संसद भवन हो या नया संसद भवन, इनमें गुलामी की मानसिकता से बाहर निकलकर नए भारत के लिए नए कानून बनाने का जो शानदार काम हुआ है, सबसे पहले तो मैं प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी को उसके लिए धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूं और आभार प्रकट करना चाहता हूं सभी माननीय सांसदों का। उसी दिशा में आज मैं भी आप सबके सामने प्रेस एंड रजिस्ट्रेशन ऑफ पीरियोडिकल्स बिल 2023 को लेकर आया हूं। ये बिल भी गुलामी की मानसिकता से बाहर निकलकर नए भारत के लिए एक नया कानून लाने का कार्य हमने किया है।
Earlier, the lower house passed the Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners Bill 2023 after discussion.
जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट का फैसला था उसके तहत ही ये बिल लेकर के आपके माध्यम से हम सदन में उपस्थित हुए हैं, इस महान सदन के समक्ष। इसलिए ये कहना कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कुछ और कहा था और आप कुछ और कर रहे हैं, हम सुप्रीम कोर्ट के डायरेक्शन के अनुसार ही ये बिल लेकर के आए हैं, जो 2 मार्च 2023 का जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट का फैसला था।
After the bills were passed, both the houses, Indian Parliament, were adjourned sine die on Thursday.
I'm sure I am not alone in expecting 2024 will be a different year in a sense that will continue wholesomely for the prosperity of Bharat, and this House plays a constructive role in delivering so.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, Parliamentary Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi and other leaders on the last day of the winter session of Parliament.
Moving on to international updates now. China hopes the Philippines will work properly with it to manage the situation in the South China Sea. The Chinese Foreign Ministry's comment came after the country's foreign minister told the Philippines to address difficulties in their relations over the South China Sea through dialogue.
Relations between China and Philippines have soured as Manila pivoting back towards the United States, which supports the Southeast Asian nation in its maritime disputes with China. Amid the turmoil, China has released a statement expressing its hope that the Philippines will cooperate effectively to handle the South China Sea problem.
China's position on maritime disputes with neighboring countries has always been clear and unchanged. We hope that the Philippines will make rational decisions and follow the effective way of getting along with neighbors and work with China to properly handle and manage the current maritime situation.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi warned the Philippines that any miscalculation in their escalating dispute in the South China Sea would bring a resolute response, and urged dialogue to address serious difficulties between the two neighbors. China has also mentioned that it will defend its rights and respond resolutely. In recent months, Beijing and Manila have exchanged scathing allegations over incidents involving Coast Guard ships, fishing boats and other vessels in the South China Sea, a vital trading route over which the two nations have conflicting claims. The souring of relations coincides with Manila's moves to boost military ties with Japan and the United States, its former colonial power and defense ally of 7 decades. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. on Thursday described as worrisome recent maritime incidents in the South China Sea which involved his military chief of staff. Manila had earlier in December accused the Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia of repeatedly firing water cannons at its boats during a resupply mission, causing serious engine damage to one and deliberately ramming another.
The recent incidents involving no less than our AFP Chief of Staff is worrisome. Yes, but it is a proud demonstration of Filipino courage against coercion and our firm resolve to protect, preserve, and uphold our territorial integrity.
China claims almost the entire South China Sea via 9-dash line that overlaps with the exclusive economic zone of Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia, Taiwan, Vietnam, and Indonesia. An international arbitration tribunal in 2016 invalidated China's claim in a ruling on a case brought by the Philippines, which Beijing did not recognize. China has instead doubled down, maintaining a heavy Coast Guard presence throughout the South China Sea, including around militarized man-made islands it built upon reefs in disputed waters, some with missile systems.
In more news from the Indo-Pacific, Russia says it's set up a comprehensive defense cooperation with North Korea. For his part, North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un says that Pyongyang would not hesitate to launch a nuclear attack if an enemy provokes it with nuclear weapons. Rahul Upadhyay has more.
Russia has established comprehensive defense cooperation with North Korea.
Course towards developing a comprehensive strategic partnership with China and India continues. Active comprehensive cooperation has been established with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
Kim Jong-un said Pyongyang would not hesitate to launch a nuclear attack if an enemy provokes it with nuclear weapons, state media reported on Thursday. The country's state-run television said Kim made the remark as he met with soldiers under the military's Missile Bureau over its recent launching drill of an intercontinental ballistic missile. North Korea said on Tuesday it had tested its newest intercontinental ballistic missile on Monday to gauge the war readiness of its nuclear force against mounting US hostility, drawing condemnation from the United States and its allies. The US has said Russia may be helping North Korea to evade Russian-backed UN sanctions prohibiting cooperation with Pyongyang, notably in ballistic missile programs and aeronautical engineering. But Kremlin denies all the allegations. DD India's Rahul Upadhyay reports.
Still to come on DD India News Hour. India's Foreign Ministry spokesperson says New Delhi is closely monitoring developments in the Red Sea. India sends relief materials and medicines to the volcano-hit Papua New Guinea. And Israel says again that it will not stop fighting until Hamas is destroyed.
Sir, try berry pulao. Too good. Good, no? Hey, why are you giving him such looks? Ignore tips and use your own mind before you order. Lots of people give unsolicited stock tips. It can be dangerous. Study the company and the risk associated. Invest only after analysis.
So much good. Invest good.
Do you know there's an investor protection fund for investors, IPF, but if your trade isn't executed on the exchange or if it's some guaranteed return scheme, then even IPF will not be able to help you.
And what if your broker becomes a defaulter then?
In that case, IPF can provide you with compensation.
Where did you learn this?
NSE's website.
So much good, so much good. Invest good.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. The UN Security Council is again due to hold a vote on urgent humanitarian pauses in Gaza after the previous vote was postponed. Meanwhile, Israeli forces say that they've uncovered a network of tunnels in the heart of Gaza City with entrances connected to the houses of Hamas leaders. More in the next report.
As Israel continued ground operations against Hamas in Gaza, siren sounds and rocket interceptions witnessed in Tel Aviv that were launched by Hamas. The rocket salvo launched by Hamas also disrupted French officials who were on a visit to Tel Aviv. The UN resolution calling for a pause in fighting to facilitate scaled aid deliveries was once again postponed on Thursday. This latest delay comes at the request of the United States, which says it needs more time to consult but assures serious negotiations on a new Gaza truce.
Diplomats here in New York say there's growing frustration with the United States' repeated requests for delays. A major sticking point in this new text is the question of whether the United Nations should take over from Israel to inspect humanitarian shipments going into Gaza, something which the organization ordinarily does in other countries. Israel, we are told, wants the United States to reject this, as it would effectively leave it with no role in screening the shipments.
Israel wants negotiation only on a temporary pause in fighting to free hostages negotiations, but Hamas is interested only in negotiations that will lead to a permanent end to fighting. That also reflects in its statement, which says there should be no talk about prisoners or exchange deals except after a full cessation of aggression. Meanwhile, Israeli troops have discovered a network of tunnels running deep beneath central Gaza City. The Israeli army on Thursday also located weapons in a school complex. Amid efforts by all parties concerned, the fighting in Gaza Strip escalated on Thursday with intense Israeli operations and a salvo launched by Hamas in Tel Aviv, when serious discussions are underway for a new truce.
And Trent Murray joins us from Tel Aviv for more. Trent, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned the Hamas to either surrender or die. Israel says it's continuing its counteroffensive on the Hamas. Can you recap the developments of the last many hours for our viewers?
Yeah, that's right. The IDF has continued to bombard from both the air and also on the ground portions of the Gaza Strip as it continues to push forward in its military campaign against Hamas. We have just heard in the past hour the IDF says it's taken full operational control of a key suburb in Gaza City today. That is in the central part of Gaza. They are now calling on civilians in the southern part of Gaza around Khan Yunis to begin evacuations. It looks as though they are now about to really push further south with that offensive. As you said, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu coming out with very strong rhetoric, saying anyone that thinks that Israel is going to stop this operation against Hamas is, quote, detached from reality. And we are seeing that rhetoric play out on the battlefield. But of course, we know that as those fights continue between Hamas and the IDF, civilians are being caught in the crossfire of all of this. The Hamas-run health ministry has said 20,000 people have now died. But a reminder of the fact that Hamas still does have incredible military capability was here today in Tel Aviv when we had rocket sirens go off. At least a dozen rockets were fired here. The Iron Dome air defence system was able to intercept all of them, and Israel reported no injuries.
Are the negotiations that are underway in multiple countries at multiple levels by multiple actors to end the Israel-Hamas conflict making much progress? How are those talks coming along? What more can you tell us?
Well, there are talks happening, and I think we can interpret that as a positive sign that potentially some form of ceasefire may be coming, but it would appear the two sides are at a stalemate. The reason I say that is because the head of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, has been in Egypt talking there with the country's spy chief on behalf of Israel, trying to get an idea of where things could lead. What we know is the Israelis are very eager to get back those 129 hostages still being held by Hamas militants in Gaza. They say they want their women, children and elderly men back. But Hamas is saying that it won't agree to release those hostages unless there is a full stop to Israel's operations in Gaza. I have to tell you, that idea here in the Israeli government is simply a non-starter. They say they're going to continue until they achieve their three aims: get their hostages back, eradicate Hamas entirely, and make sure Gaza doesn't become a haven of terrorism again that can attack Israel. That is the perspective of the Israeli government.
Trent, thank you. Trent Murray reporting there from Tel Aviv. Meanwhile, British Foreign Minister David Cameron has spoken about maritime trade corridors in the Red Sea amid the ongoing conflict in Gaza. Speaking alongside Egypt's counterpart Sameh al-Shukri in Cairo on Thursday, Cameron said it would be damaging to Egypt, the UK and global trade as a whole if attacks by Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi militants continues on shipping lanes in the Red Sea. Cameron also called for a consensus on a United Nations Security Council resolution to ensure more aid made its way into Gaza.
We had good discussions on the dangers in the Red Sea of threats to ships. It is absolutely essential that those maritime corridors, that the free movement of ships, of goods, of manufacturers, of oil, of world trade, that they keep going. It will be damaging to Egypt, it will be damaging to Britain, damaging to the whole world if there are these repeated attacks on shipping. That is what Operation Prosperity Guardian is all about, and Britain is proud to take part in that with British ships trying to help keep those sea lanes open, and we really must see an end to these threats.
Moving on, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has called German leaders a thieving lot after being asked at a news conference in Tunisia about a German proposal to confiscate frozen Russian assets. Prosecutors in Germany said that they had requested the confiscation of more than 720 million euros from the Frankfurt bank account of a Russian financial institution. Russia on Thursday promised to respond in kind should the European Union go ahead with a plan to ring-fence profits generated from Russia's frozen assets in the EU and hand them to Ukraine. Talking about Ukraine, its Prime Minister has said that the country has received the last 1.5 billion euro tranche from the 18 billion package from the European Union for 2023. The country's economy depends heavily on financial support from partners, and Kyiv has been concerned whether it will continue, as new packages have been blocked so far, both in the EU and in the US. Now, this year, the EU was the largest donor of direct budget support, covering more than 45% of the external financing needs. This, according to Ukraine's finance minister. For 2024, Ukraine hopes to receive 18.5 billion euros from the EU and more than $8 billion from a US package that also contains vital military assistance. Voting on both packages was moved to the beginning of next year. In more news from Europe, President Andrzej Duda of Poland on Thursday denounced state media reforms announced by Prime Minister Donald Tusk as anarchy, as tensions mounted between the head of state and Tusk's new pro-European Union government. The swearing-in of former European Council President Donald Tusk has marked the beginning of a period of cohabitation with President Duda, an ally of the previous nationalist government.
Yesterday, the constitution was blatantly violated by Polish Culture Minister. It cannot be that the lower chamber of Polish Parliament adopts the resolutions, and these resolutions, according to Constitutional Minister, replace the acts. Yes, these are completely illegal actions.
Russia has handed out over $12 billion in state subsidies and loans to prevent its civil aviation sector from collapsing because of Western sanctions. Major Western plane makers Airbus and Boeing halted supplies and maintenance support to Russian airlines in March 2022. To support the sector, Russia had to dip into its reserve funds. Russian airlines currently operate 991 planes, partly by importing spare parts via third countries without the manufacturer's permission. And DD India's Dasha Chernyshova reports from Moscow. Take a listen.
According to the estimates of the Western media, Russia has spent over $12 billion in state subsidies and loans to keep its aviation sector afloat over the past 2 years. Since the start of Russia's so-called special military operation in Ukraine, aviation sector has faced severe sanctions targeting major Russian airlines and their executives. Boeing and Airbus suspended the delivery of spare parts to Russia and halted maintenance and support. So as in many other areas, Russia had to develop its aviation industry alone with domestically sourced parts. Anna Panina, director of the Aviation Industry Department at the Ministry of Industry and Trade, said earlier this year that between 2024 and 2026, Russia will spend around $1.2 billion on aircraft manufacturing and financial assistance for airlines. She said the goal is to increase the share of aircraft and helicopters produced in Russia in the fleet of the largest carriers by 2030. Earlier this year, Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin announced new solutions to support the domestic aircraft industry, including easing the rules of granting subsidies from the federal budget. Dasha Chernyshova, reporting in Moscow for DD India.
Responding to a question on India-Canada relations, India's Ministry of External Affairs has said that the core issue with Canada is a space given to anti-India elements and extremists.
Our position has been quite consistent, and whenever this has been raised, I think we have highlighted how we see the problem, and frankly, the core issue remains the space that is given to extremists and terrorists and anti-India elements in that country. I think you would have heard also from External Affairs Minister recently, as well as others, about the developments of that case and the fact that if there's something that we look into it. But at the core of it, the problem remains this. So I wouldn't like to say whether they have noted a shift or not, because certainly our position has remained consistent, and we would hope that they would take action.
And speaking on the death penalty awarded to 8 former Indian Navy personnel by Qatar, India's External Affairs Ministry spokesperson in his media briefing in New Delhi said the case is in Qatar's Court of Appeal.
This case is now in the Court of Appeal, as it's called. And there have been 3 hearings in the Qatar Court of Appeal, November 23rd, November 30th, and December 7th. Meanwhile, our ambassador in Doha got consular access, mentioned that last time we met, to meet all the 8 men on December 3rd.
And as Yemen's Houthi rebels step up attacks on ships in the Red Sea, an increase in the oil and natural gas prices has become a major concern. Addressing worries over any disruption to commercial shipping, India's Ministry of External Affairs said the country is monitoring the developments very closely.
India has always, of course, we have a vested interest and have been supportive of the free movement of commercial shipping. So that is something that we are interested in. We are, of course, monitoring the developments there. Insofar as I think there was, we've also, as you know, part of efforts globally to, or international efforts to ensure free shipping, whether it be piracy or otherwise.
Meanwhile, India has dispatched relief materials to Papua New Guinea by a special charter flight. It was part of a $1 million relief assistance announced by India. The cargo included 11 tons of disaster relief material and 6 tons of medical aid for people affected by a volcanic eruption in the Pacific island country. The aid includes medical necessities such as surgical items, sanitary pads, rapid antigen and pregnancy test kits, mosquito repellents and baby food. Additionally, 11 tons of disaster relief material such as tents, sleeping mats or bags, sanitary utilities or hygiene kits, ready-to-eat meals and water storage utilities were included. And now take a look at some more stories making news around the world. An unexpected strike by French workers at Eurotunnel, the undersea link between the UK and continental Europe, on Thursday interrupted cross-channel rail traffic, threatening the Christmas holiday plans of many travellers. Bushfires in Western Australia destroyed at least 2 homes as residents were told to evacuate. It was the 4th emergency level fire in the state within the last 48 hours as the hot and windy conditions increase the fire risk and made things challenging for firefighters battling to control the fires. Tourists in Reykjavik, Iceland expressed that they feel safe following a volcanic eruption on the Reykjanes Peninsula. The officials have assured that they were monitoring the situation, especially for gas released from that volcano. And still to come on DD India News Hour. A discussion on the Press and Registration of Periodicals Bill and other key pieces of legislation passed by India's Parliament. Pakistan's former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif says the country is responsible for its own downfall. And the largest ever outreach by India's government, the Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, is continuing in various parts of the country.
Sir, try berry pulao. Too good. Good, no? Hey, why are you giving him such looks? Ignore tips and use your own mind before you order. Lots of people give unsolicited stock tips. It can be dangerous. Study the company and the risk associated. Invest only after analysis.
Do you know there's an investor protection fund for investors, IPF, but if your trade isn't executed on the exchange or if it's some guaranteed return scheme, then even IPF will not be able to help you.
And what if your broker becomes a defaulter then?
In that case, IPF can provide you with compensation.
Where did you learn this?
NSE's website.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. A quick recap of the headlines. Indian Parliament adjourned sine die criminal law bills, press and registration of periodicals bill and the telecommunications bill 2023, among others, passed. India says its core issue with Canada is the space given to extremists and anti-India elements operating from that country. And Egypt seeks to broker a Gaza ceasefire. UN Security Council vote delayed again as the US works on resolution for ceasefire and hostage release. India's Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Singh Thakur gave away Deepika Business Excellence Awards in the national capital on Thursday. Deepika is celebrating 137 years of journalism and is the first Malayalam daily of India. Speaking on the occasion, Information and Broadcasting Minister said the Press and Registration of Periodicals Bill 2023, which was passed by a voice vote in India's lower house, will make the registration of periodicals simple.
With the passage of this bill, it's a one step. It's a simple, smart and simultaneous process. You have to do online application with the RNI, sending a copy to the DM. If the district magistrate does not reply within 2 months, RNI can give you the certificate and you will get the title, your publication will get the registration. You don't need to run to any office. No need to go to any office physically.
The European Union Council has said that it had approved a plan to give electric vehicle makers in the EU and Britain until the end of 2026 to comply with local content rules to delay the imposition of tariffs on EVs traded with the UK. It adopted a decision which will allow the EU to agree with the UK on the extension of the current rules of origin for electric vehicles and batteries until 31st December of 2026. This will prevent the entry into force of more stringent rules from 1st January 2024 and the application of a 10% tariff on goods traded between the EU and the UK, which do not meet those requirements. Japan is protesting a ruling by a South Korean court that holds 2 Japanese companies accountable for forced labor during World War II. It comes as deputy finance ministers from the 2 countries hold talks on boosting economic cooperation, a meeting that's considered by experts to indicate swiftly warming ties. DD India's Chris Gilbert has more from Tokyo.
This court ruling could develop into a complete spanner in the works for the rapidly warming ties between South Korea and Japan. Over the last 9 months, the 2 leaders of the 2 countries have managed to put historical grievances behind them, which had been simmering tensions between South Korea and Japan, particularly over the last few years, and really clear a path forward to work together and with the United States on areas of common interest. But now these historical grievances have come right back to the surface with the Supreme Court ruling. It refers back to rulings by other courts in 2018 in South Korea, which called on Mitsubishi Heavy and Nippon Steel to compensate the victims, survivors and families of those who were subjected to forced labor by those companies and other Japanese institutions at a time when Japan ruled the Korean Peninsula from 1910 to 1945. It focuses on forced or at least free labor without any compensation. Nippon Steel and Mitsubishi Heavy, after rulings in 2018, effectively said that they are not going to compensate survivors or their families, believing that this was already solved in an agreement in 1965. And earlier this year in March, we saw the South Korean government a year into Yoon Suk-yeol's presidency say, look, we are just going to compensate them ourselves. It's going to come from the South Korean coffers. And since then, we have seen the path clear for the warming of ties that have subsequently developed between Japan and South Korea. So now this court ruling throws all that back into question. Japan has protested the ruling. Yoshimasa Hayashi, the new chief cabinet secretary, absolutely blasting it, saying it's totally unacceptable and a clear violation of the Japan-South Korea claims agreement. So again, harking back to previous agreements that have already been made to protest court rulings, but questions remain about what the future holds and if this is going to fray, yet again, ties between the two countries. Chris Gilbert in Tokyo reporting for DD India.
And shifting focus from the Indo-Pacific now to South America, Argentina's new president Javier Milei has signed an economic reform decree lifting export limits and easing regulations to address the country's severe economic crisis. Milei, who has been in office for less than 2 weeks, has pledged to curb inflation but has warned that economic shock treatment is the only solution. Latin America's third biggest economy is struggling after decades of debt and financial mismanagement, with annual inflation at 140%. Meanwhile, thousands of people in Buenos Aires have been protesting against the government's economic shock measures in the first real test for new President Javier Milei. Amid police presence, the protesters, led by groups that represent the unemployed, made their way to a main square in the city, a historic meeting point in front of the presidential palace, to demand greater financial support for the poor. And staying in South America, Venezuela has freed 10 U.S. citizens as part of a prisoner swap. It's the largest ever prisoner swap between the two governments of Venezuela and the U.S. DD India's Mary Trina Mina has more.
The White House confirmed the release of 10 U.S. citizens, 6 of them designated as wrongfully detained by the State Department. The swap took place in a third country. Before leaving Venezuela, all of the prisoners went through a medical examination. Among the Americans released, 2 former members of the U.S. Special Forces, Aaron Berry and Luke Denman, who were sentenced to 20 years in jail after participating in a failed attempt to overthrow President Nicolás Maduro. This swap comes after the U.S. eased oil sanctions on Venezuela in October. It's the result of many months of secret talks between Venezuelan and U.S. officials. The White House says this is a positive step forward. The current negotiations aim to secure competitive and democratic presidential elections in Venezuela in 2024. Returning to Venezuela is Colombian businessman Alex Saab, who was arrested in 2020 and accused of money laundering. Saab was facing criminal prosecution in a Florida court. Caracas celebrated the return of Saab to Venezuelan soil, saying he was kidnapped by the U.S. On Wednesday, he was welcomed by President Maduro at Venezuela's presidential palace. The Venezuelan government also freed about 24 individuals, some of them linked to the opposition. In Caracas, Mary Trina Mina reporting for DD India.
And in news just coming in, a shooter at a Prague university killed 11 people and injured dozens of others on Thursday before being eliminated by the police. Videos emerged on social media showing emergency crews responding to the incident. Police gave no details about the victims or the circumstances of the gunfire in the Czech Republic's capital, Prague. They said officers were deployed due to a shooting at a school in the Jan Palach Square. Coming back to South Asia now, Pakistan's former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif on Tuesday said that neither India nor the US were behind the cash-strapped country's miseries. Pointing out the dire economic situation of his country, the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz Supremo asserted that Pakistan is responsible for its own downfall. Pointing out the dire economic situation of the country, Nawaz Sharif asserted that Pakistan is responsible very much on its own. And back home, preparations are in the final stages for the Pran Pratishtha Mahotsav of Ramlalai Ram Temple at Ayodhya in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath reached Ayodhya on Thursday to take stock of the construction work of Ram Temple in Sri Ram Janmabhoomi complex. He also held consultations with General Secretary of the Sri Ram Janmabhoomi Tirth Kshetra, Champat Rai, regarding the preparations for the Pran Pratishtha Mahotsav. Earlier, the Chief Minister offered prayers at Hanuman Gali Temple at Ayodhya and took the blessings of Lord Sri Ram after offering prayers. During his visit, he also inspected the under-construction work of Ayodhya Dham Railway Station and Maryada Purushottam Sri Ram International Airport. Besides, the Chief Minister also held a meeting with the officials and took stock of the progress of development works taking place in Ayodhya. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is scheduled to visit Ayodhya on 30th December, where he will inaugurate an international airport. He will also hold a public meeting and visit the Ayodhya railway station as well.
दुनिया के सबसे लोकप्रिय नेता माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी 30 दिसंबर को जो उनकी प्रस्तावित डेट है आने की, उस तारीख को यहाँ पर आएंगे और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय हवाई अड्डे का लोकार्पण भी करेंगे, एक जनसभा भी करने वाले हैं और अयोध्या रेलवे स्टेशन पर आकर के यहाँ से एक नई ट्रेन दिल्ली के लिए देने का काम करेंगे.
The Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra is being undertaken across the country with the aim to attain saturation of flagship schemes of the government, to ensuring that the benefits of these schemes reach all targeted beneficiaries in a time-bound manner. Manoj Sinha, the Lieutenant Governor of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, joined the Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra at Mahal Shah Panchayat in Samba today. He also laid the foundation stone of a 50-bedded Ayush integrated hospital at Ghagwal. The hospital will provide Ayurveda, Unani and homeopathic healthcare facilities to people. The Lieutenant Governor visited the stalls put up by government departments and handed over sanction letters to beneficiaries under various schemes. On the occasion, the beneficiaries of flagship schemes shared their experience under the Meri Kahani, Meri Zubani. A project to promote regular and assisted migration for youth and skilled professionals supported by International Organization for Migration Development Fund was launched in New Delhi. Project Prayas envisages bringing together national and state governments and other stakeholders for greater coordination, sharing of best practices, policy recommendations, and disseminating timely information on matters related to international migration.
A key priority of the Government of India, which is to facilitate safe and legal migration from India, especially focusing on our youth and skilled professionals. The share of India's working age population to total population will reach its highest level at 68.9% by 2030. With our demographic dividends, we are at an advantageous position to make most of the opportunities that arise in international markets and move towards achieving the goal of making India a global hub for skills.
The initiative was conceived against the background of India increasingly emerging as a country of origin in the global migration trends, with international migration contributing to 2.8% of India's GDP, which is almost 3 times the Asia-Pacific average. And adding to that, the recent World Bank, very recent World Bank estimates have pegged the international remittances around $125 billion a year, which has jumped up from $100 billion last year. And of course, several innovative policy initiatives taken by the Government of India over the last few years.
India will organize a food festival, the Indus Food, in January 2024. Representatives from many countries around the world will participate in this food festival. For the first time, foreign companies have also been invited to this food festival. Buyers and sellers from across the country and across the world will take part in this festival.
इंडस फूड जो कि 7 साल से डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ कॉमर्स TPCI के साथ मिलकर ऑर्गेनाइज कर रहे हैं, ग्रो कर रहे हैं, इसको इस साल काफ़ी तेज़ी से ग्रो करके डबल द कैपेसिटी लास्ट ईयर से एग्जैक्टली डबल किया गया और इसमें बहुत सारे नए चीज़ें जोड़ी गई हैं. पहली बार फॉरेन कंपनीज़ को भी पार्टिसिपेट करने की अनुमति दी गई है और 100 से ज़्यादा फॉरेन कंपनीज़ भी आके इसमें एग्जिबिट कर रही हैं.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. A look at how people around the world are enjoying this festive season. And France mulls moving the opening ceremony of the 2024 Paris Olympics from the river Seine because of security risks.
Sir, try berry pulao. Too good. Good, no? Hey, why are you giving him such looks? Ignore tips and use your own mind before you order. Lots of people give unsolicited stock tips. It can be dangerous. Study the company and the risk associated. Invest only after analysis.
Do you know there's an investor protection fund for investors, IPF, but if your trade isn't executed on the exchange or if it's some guaranteed return scheme, then even IPF will not be able to help you.
And what if your broker becomes a defaulter then?
In that case, IPF can provide you with compensation.
Where did you learn this?
NSE's website.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Going back to our earlier story where a shooter at a Prague university killed several people and injured dozens of others on Thursday before being eliminated himself by the police. DD India's Ross Cullen has more.
Well, armed police were deployed to the area in and around the famous Charles University in downtown Prague. It's one of the oldest universities in the world and just a short walk from the landmark Charles Bridge in the centre of the Czech capital. There were videos purportedly showing the gunman dressed in all black and aiming a weapon over the side of a balcony, police confirming that he had been eliminated, in their words, but not before those confirmed fatalities. Other videos showing students sheltering high up on the side of a building on a narrow ledge just underneath a balcony. And there was an email circulated to staff and students at the university, which was seen by the Reuters news agency, urging everyone to shelter in place, stay in your rooms and offices, lock the doors, place furniture in front of the doors and turn the lights off. Other footage showing hundreds of people fleeing the university and thousands running away in the centre of the Czech capital. This is a very busy time of year for Prague, which has lots of festive markets, which are very popular, and that shooting coming just 4 days before Christmas. In Paris, Ross Cullen reporting for DD India.
With Christmas just knocking at the door, let's take a look at how people around the world are enjoying and preparing for the festive season this year.
A robot artist named Ida to take part in a nearly 200 years old traditional UK festival. The AI artist prepares her lines for Christmas greetings to warm the audience.
I'm the world's first ultra-realistic robot artist.
Paris, the city of lights, gets all glittery with Christmas lights as the holiday season is in full swing. The city welcomed the festive season by lighting up the famous Eiffel Tower with beautiful lights, capturing attention of residents and tourists with festive illuminations. The residents of Tokyo welcomed the Christmas season with sparkling light displays and decorations. The Christmas tunnel attracted crowds, while the festive decorations brought sheer joy to the city. Christmas light displays and decorations thrilled onlookers in Sydney after the largest Catholic cathedral of Australia gets illuminated with colourful portrayals along with the Christmas carol as the festive season kicked into gear in the harbour city. Meanwhile, the Brussels Christmas market served up a festive twist on Belgian delicacies with waffles and beverages as the city prepared to celebrate the holidays while sipping the elixir of joy.
And now to news from the world of sport. The opening ceremony at next year's Paris Olympics could be moved for security reasons. President Macron of France says everything was being done so that the event, which is set to take place on the river Seine in Paris, will be able to go ahead as planned. Ross Cullen has more.
President Macron told French TV journalists in an interview on Wednesday night local time that the Olympics opening ceremony could be moved to a different location if an attack were detected 2 weeks in advance. Now, the National Stadium, the Stade de France, is the obvious backup location for the opening event. What the Paris 2024 organisers are trying to pull off will be unique and a first for the Olympics, with the opening ceremony not scheduled to take place in a stadium, but instead going to happen on the River Seine in the middle of Paris. Now, having an opening ceremony on a moving, working river in the centre of a busy capital city presents numerous logistical challenges, from the 500,000 spectators who are expected to be able to line the banks of the river to try to catch a glimpse, all the athletes, all the dignitaries. The athletes themselves will be travelling on boats down the River Seine rather than, as is traditional, with the flag bearers from all the different national Olympic committees, from France to India, the United States and so on. They would usually do a lap of a stadium, perhaps with 80,000 people watching on to celebrate the opening ceremony, but instead, as I say, they'll be on these barges going down the River Seine, ending underneath the Eiffel Tower. Now, there are lots of other issues as well. The weather, particularly, we could well be having some thunderstorms. Summer downpours are not uncommon in late July when the opening ceremony is scheduled to take place. But President Macron, in that interview on Wednesday night, did say that everything is being done to make sure that everything is ready. He says it will be an opening ceremony with beauty and with art. In Paris, Ross Cullen reporting for DD India.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website, ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.